And if you go to our prisons, you will hear poverty, poverty, poverty. You will meet people who can't read and write, and see so much potential that is just lost. And we spend billions of dollars on the symptoms of people not getting literacy. I mean, it's almost a direct pathway. I mean, the research is pretty clear. If you can't read, we got a pipeline into prison for you. We
Mhm.
love to beat up the parents. And what I
Mhm.
teach is those parents probably had a worse life than the kids are having. My parents taught me everything they knew. They didn't know how to get out of poverty. They got strong messages from the time they could open their eyes that they weren't education material. They didn't look right, they didn't talk right, they didn't live in the right kind of houses, they didn't drive the right kind of cars. People like us don't get educated, and that's exactly how I grew up. So I've had people say to me over the last 34 years of trainings, "Well, Dr. Beagle, my parents loved me. They taught me that education was important."
Right.
So mine didn't? No. My
Yeah.
parents love me, but they didn't know. Why would you go to a place where you're made fun of and ridiculed and humiliated, where you don't know what
Mhm.
they're talking about and you never have the right shoes or backpack or haircut? You're just wrong. So there's no point in going. And
Yeah.
another key piece to this is tied to Paulo Freire's work. He's a Brazilian scholar who writes about poverty worldwide. He
Right.
says the United States is the only country in the whole world that teaches its people they are the cause of poverty because there's not an honest dialogue about affordable housing, living wage jobs, access to transportation that can get you where you need to be, preventative care, food, the nutrition to feed your brain and your bones. We don't talk about that. And
Mhm.
so people come to believe they are the poverty and they internalize it as if it is a personal deficiency. So a lot of times when teachers tell me, "Well, they won't try, they're not motivated," I'm like, "I know why. I know what it's like to not have hope and confidence because poverty steals that. I also know what it's like to rebuild that and have people start looking at what you do know and what you can do, and then building on that and watch you fly and understanding that what kids know when you meet them isn't all they can know. That's just what they've been exposed to in their context in a relevant and meaningful way. So we often have, I tell the story, my parents never went to school conferences. And what do we say about that? Most people will be like, well, they don't care or love their kids. My mom would say, I ain't going in there and make a fool out of myself. Those people want to talk about school. What's the point of me
Right.
going in there? So,
Right.
so there's such a misunderstanding of the different contexts we live in and how your context teaches you the meaning. And that meaning in my doctoral research with students cross race from generations of poverty, I said, what did education mean to you and your family? The number one reply was stress. So in my Beagle Poverty Immersion Institutes, I teach about different contexts of poverty. So there's generational poverty, which is the deepest poverty. Those are going to be the folks who need the most. Uh, uh, walk me through this, navigate this middle class system, this middle class world. There's working class poverty, immigrant poverty, situational poverty. That's the kind of poverty. Like I had a guy in my doctoral research. I was looking for people who experienced poverty, who got their bachelor's degree, and he said, "I'll do your study. I grew up poor." And I said, "So tell me, um, how did your family get by?" He said, "Well, my father was a physician. He died, I was 12. I had to go live with grandparents, and I had the right mindset. I was motivated and determined. I pulled myself up, worked in my grandparents' store, and became a doctor like my dad. And I'm listening to him through the context of generations of poverty. And I'm thinking, you knew someone who owned a store and you were related to them? That's not poverty. So I
Yeah,
really began to
yeah.
understand that we don't have a clear definition of poverty, and that's a big part of what we have to understand in order to break the barriers. But in my experience, I'm a fluke. The studies show that 83% of children born into the context I was born into, generational poverty, 83% will not get out unless we do something different. And I'm privileged at age 26. I had an eviction notice. I had my lights shut out. I had a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. My marriage had ended. And through community action program, I got linked into a pilot program where people really took the time to get to know me
Mm,
and began teaching me that I wasn't stupid, that I actually knew some things because I thought everything I did was nothing. And they had me write down everything you do in one day and bring it in, and I did that, and they had printed professional job titles, the skill sets needed to do those job titles, and how much they paid, and they just started circling things that I was doing in survival mode that were skills on those professional job descriptions. So I'm looking at the title, I'm looking at the pay, and I always tell people, I got taller every day because I was beginning to see, like, I've done some things. I'm not stupid, and
right.
that gives you the hope to really think maybe I needed that realization, and the other realization was the 4 women running that pilot program. They shared their life stories, and I had never heard a middle class person's life story. So as
Mm,
I'm listening to their story at 26, I'm thinking, "You
hmm,
lived in one house your whole childhood? You didn't get evicted? You've never been hungry? You had car insurance, credit cards?" Educated par And my mind was exploding, and I'm thinking, "No wonder you're on that side of the table. You're not
right.
better than me. You're just people. You've had different experiences and different exposures." And that was the moment, that was a epiphany where I could actually get my little brown pleather diary and write, "I think I'm gonna try to get that GED they've been talking about. Then maybe
Mm,
I'll be somebody." Because poverty so teaches you you're not. You don't get to eat. Um, I have an uncle who can't read and write, and the White House passed legislation saying that if you have any outstanding tickets or warrants, you have to take care of them or lose your disability. Well, by the time he got somebody around him who could read that letter, he was evicted and homeless and living in his van with his dog. And it took 2 years to get his disability back. He didn't know. And I train attorneys, and I show them this clip of him talking about that experience. And these attorneys will say, "Donna, you would need an attorney to find an 18-year-old ticket." Expecting somebody who's not literate to go through that system, it's just not going to happen. I tell people, I will say, "Hey, how many of you know people working and not making it?" So I'm not going to tell you to get a job. You know people with jobs and they're not making it. I'm going to tell you, if you don't get a post-secondary skill or a degree, you're going to be poor your whole life, and so will your kids. And then inevitably, they will say, "I'm not good at school. I can't read. I, I don't learn well." And I'll say to them, if you didn't learn when you were in school, it's because someone didn't teach to your learning style. Someone didn't build the connections you needed so that poverty didn't steal your opportunity to learn.